Hello, everyone. Carl Brady here for East Alabama Works and the East Alabama Works video podcast series. I appreciate you being with us. East Alabama Works is your regional workforce council for Region 2. We cover 7 counties here in East Alabama. And we have an interesting topic for you today. We talk a lot about workforce barriers and some of the barriers to getting people into the workforce. Our labor force participation rate is low in Alabama and even lower here in East Alabama. So we need to find out why people aren't going to work and how do we get them back to work and get them back into a working situation. And some of the barriers that we identify that always come up include things like childcare, access to childcare, and the expense of childcare. But if you're working third shift, who keeps your kids? Because there's not a daycare center open up at the third shift. Those kind of things. We also look at medical care and access to medical care. If you can't keep, if someone can't stay healthy, they can't work and come to work on a regular basis. And another one that we've identified as a barrier to working is one that most people find surprising because we have so many vehicles on the road. Everywhere you look, there are cars and trucks. Most families have 2 or 3 vehicles, but it is still a barrier, especially in some of the rural areas of Alabama. We notice that maybe a family only has 1 car, but 2 adults need to be going to work, or there are other types of situations that make transportation a barrier to getting into the workforce. And I'm happy to have with me today Nolen Smith, who is with the Enterprise Company, and think Enterprise rental cars and those kind of things. And they have a program called Commute with Enterprise. And we're going to talk about that today as we address that transportation barrier. And Nolen, thank you for coming to the podcast and welcome on.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. That's a great introduction. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk about transportation and some of the barriers and challenges throughout the state and specifically in more of these rural markets.
Well, what has your research shown about the barrier of transportation being a barrier in some of these markets?
Yeah, and there's multiple, facets that go into it. You touched on two of the biggest challenges we see across the board in conversations, childcare and transportation. If I could find a solution for childcare, I would certainly be in that market as well. But for us, as you mentioned, being with enterprise mobility and being in a transportation side of that, we're able to partner with employees to identify challenges. And you mentioned a couple. Maybe it is a family that only has 1 vehicle, that they're having 2 adults trying to find, an opportunity to get into the workforce based off a schedule. Public transportation may be a challenge in some of these areas as well, based off of the work schedule. You mentioned working some overnight, some later shifts. Transportation is still a challenge, even when the sun goes down. So it's definitely something that it is a forefront of a lot of employers' mind of how they can get their top talent to work, but also the individual employees themselves when they're searching for jobs. How are they going to get there? To be able to apply for a job, you got to be able to get to it. So that's part of the challenges that we're seeing and the conversations that we're having today.
Yeah, most all job descriptions are going to start out with must have reliable transportation because you've got
Absolutely.
to be able to get to work. Um, so what you guys, we've seen several different things over the years. We do have one local company that is utilizing rental cars in a way that similar to what you guys are doing, that an employee can drive the rental car home and people can carpool with them. And we'll talk more about your program. But we've also looked at some of the dial-a-ride type programs, even those that
Mhm.
are federally funded that don't cost money, but people work odd different hours. And the person providing the dial-a-ride program is trying to get one person to work at 2 o'clock, another person to work at 4 o'clock, another person that gets off at 7 o'clock in the evening, another one gets off at 11 o'clock. And the people doing that, or the ride share services like that, are just struggling to make that model work. So
Mhm.
talk about your model with Commute with Enterprise. What are you guys offering to address this problem?
Yeah, and so when you start to get into some of those challenges and trying to be flexible, but also provide a service that's reliable. So what we do when we partner with employers, we look to identify groups of individuals who live in the same general area, maybe along the same corridor in the same vicinity, who work the same shift. So we tried, just for an example, an 8 to 5 shift. We looked to identify 4 up to 15 individuals who live in that same general area, and we provide a vehicle on a turnkey basis. So it's very similar to as if you were to rent a vehicle just at one of our, neighborhood rental car branches. The vehicle stays with this group of 4 to 15. They're able to take it either back to their home or a centralized location, but it's used based off of their shift. And they're able to use this vehicle and enjoy the benefits that come with it, as well as the cost savings by able to split that commuting cost amongst their peers and sharing the responsibilities of driving as well. So it's a little bit more flexible than maybe just having the constraints of public transportation, but it also gives them the freedom of having a vehicle that they can move and maneuver themselves based off of their schedule.
Now, when you put together a program like this, you work with the employer,
Mhm.
right? You set this up with the employer to determine how many vehicles, how many employees are going to participate, and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ideally, we would love to get the employer contribution as well to be able to reach the most amount of people possible. We can work on an individual basis, but having the employer's buy-in as far as the backing, the support, we're able to reach a lot bigger pool of individuals. Where we see a lot of our employer partnerships, they may be having challenges with recruiting, retention, maybe absenteeism, tardiness. Maybe they're having some cost savings, initiatives, or even sustainability. We have a nice list of pillars that we kind of look for challenges with individual employers, and then we look to go a little bit further into reaching with their individual employees to identify some of these challenges. Maybe they know a group of people who are having constant challenges with transportation, whether it be riding with a friend, maybe they're Ubering to work. In some cases, unfortunately, we see people who are walking to work in these rural markets. And this is an option to be able to provide a reliable and affordable piece of transportation for a group to get to and from. It's been able to save some jobs in some aspects. So it's been really impactful.
Who pays the cost of this? Is the employer pay it and then somehow pass it along to the employee, or do they offer it to the employee as a benefit? How does that usually work?
It's a great question. So it really can be set up whatever makes the most sense for the employer. Ideally, we'd be able to partner with the employer, and this can be a benefit that is actually pre-tax payroll deducted. So they can pre-tax payroll deduct up to $315 per month per individual through the IRS tax code section 132F. And that is similar to a healthcare benefit. So it saves on the company side their payroll taxes, and on the individual side, their taxable income. So there's benefits on both sides. And in a lot of these rural markets, we've seen that having an option for a payroll deduction is a little bit easier for them to opt into, as opposed to maybe trying to put a credit card or a debit card down that they may not have access to. It's a little easier for them to be able to enjoy the benefits by having a payroll deducted. Makes it a little bit more seamless. Plus, the benefits are on both sides for the employer and the individual.
And the companies do keep a, they're not charging a huge amount of money because the employee has to see the benefit of it as well. And the benefit
Correct.
is if they're, lack of wear and tear and maintenance on the car, if they have a car, or if they don't have a car, no car payment plus the gas and the wear and tear and the oil changes and all of those kind of things. It's a great money saver for the employee to participate in
Mhm.
one of these programs.
Absolutely. On average, we see that the employees, so the individuals themselves, can save up to almost $6,000 a year, which is about $500 a month. And that can go a long way for a lot of these rural families who, for times when fuel is going up, the groceries are going up, and they have a family with little kids, it can get expensive. So any little bit helps. And having those, what we call out of sight, out of mind expenses that go into traveling day to day to work, whether it be fuel, wear and tear on the vehicle. New tires are very expensive. And if you have to get those multiple times throughout the year, it can add up. So any savings that we can do certainly helps. And then the benefit from the employer side to be able to set themselves apart in the area to be able to provide an additional benefit that maybe their competitors may not be, certainly helps to attract that top talent that they're looking for.
And it gives the employer also a little peace of mind as to knowing that those employees are going to be at work, they're going to be on time, and they're going to be there consistently, which is an ongoing problem throughout the workforce.
Absolutely. And one of the best things about partnering with Enterprise Mobility is, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the rental branches, we get a lot of our support from those local branches. And if something were to happen, we're able to work locally to be able to provide a solution if something were to happen on the vehicle. On a trip into work, we do have some local support and team members who are close by to be able to fix some problems that do come up from time to time. But it's really good to have that backing with a company that's in most neighborhoods around the area. So it's really good to have that support.
I know one of the first questions as a business person that would come up is, what about insurance? What if our commuter vehicle has an accident and there's uh, injury or loss of life, or another person is injured? What about who carries the insurance? How does the insurance work and make sure the company and the drivers or the people in the vehicle are protected?
Right. And by no means do we want, obviously, God forbid, for any of that to happen. But with these benefits, Commute with Enterprise, we actually provide a full coverage. So it's a turnkey program. We provide full coverage on our vehicle, liability coverage as well for any third party, roadside protections, as well as preventative maintenance on the vehicle. So when you think of being covered and having that insurance, so to speak, like you said, the vehicles are going to come covered. And this is a voluntary program that really sits outside of the scope of employment. So think of as you're driving your typical vehicle or even public transportation today to work, this is going to be a replacement for that. So the individuals, they don't have to put up a personal policy as far as insurance. They don't necessarily have to carry personal insurance because our vehicles will come covered. So it gives the individuals a peace of mind that if, God forbid, something were to happen, they don't have to stress about trying to figure out how to pay a deductible or figure out how to get these things fixed. The partnership that we have those built-in fail safes to support those challenges as they come up, to provide a loaner, to provide a new vehicle if it does need to go into the shop for any downtime. We can provide a secondary vehicle to be able to support their commutes to and from work as that one's getting fixed.
What kind of vehicles do you normally provide in this program?
All of them are going to be at least 7 passengers. So with the federal guidelines of what a van pool looks like, there has to be 6 seatbelts plus the driver, so 7 total. Typically, what we see is your 7-passenger SUVs and minivans. So think of similar to Nissan Pathfinders, Ford Explorers, Kia Sorentos as far as SUVs. And minivans would be Chrysler Pacifica, Voyager type, all the way up to your 15-passenger. I think of like a church style van is usually like the Ford Transit style is what we use. And we have some options in between that have multiple seats. So the majority of what we have are those 7-passenger SUVs and minivans. And then we can get into the 15 passengers for some of the larger areas as well.
The employee that gets assigned the job of driving the vehicle, do they have to have any kind of special vetting, or do they have any like, a certain kind of CDL license or anything, since they're now driving other people around in that type of setting? Is there any special requirements to be the driver?
Not necessarily as far as a specific license, which is a good thing because you don't have to go through any certain approval to get to be able to drive even the bigger vehicles. There's no special driver's license, CDLs, or any requirements. What we do is we go through a third party. They check their MVR record. So it's not Nolen, it's not Commute with Enterprise that is checking the background as far as the MVR record. They check their driving history over the last 5 years just to ensure there's no major incidents, no major violations that are sitting out there. If there were one or two, our team can kind of work together and see if there may be an opportunity to surpass those. But that is a pass or a fail. And if it is a fail, they can reach out directly and see if there may be something specific that's holding it back that they may can overcome. The biggest caveat is they just have to be over the age of 25. And then once they pass that driving history, that MVR check, as long as they're approved to drive and operate, then they're approved. And ideally, in the vehicle, we would have multiple drivers approved so they can share in that driving responsibility. And it doesn't necessarily have to fall on one individual. The whole group can split. If they want to do 1 day a week or each take 1 week out of the month to do the driving, they're more than welcome to do that. We just like to have that opportunity for a backup driver if someone's on vacation or out sick. There's multiple options there.
How do you ensure that whoever's assigned to drive is just driving back and forth to work and not picking their kids up at school, not running to the grocery store, that kind of thing?
So we do have a little bit of built-in personal use, if you will. We allow up to a couple hundred miles per month. Now, it's nothing to where they can take a trip to the beach by no means. And we have processes in place to ensure that based off of their monthly route, for example, if they're targeted to go 1,000 miles, we know if it comes back with 2,500 miles, they probably did something they weren't supposed to do. So each time they get gas, each time they get service, those mileage numbers are tracked. So we're able to see on our side how much of the use they're actually using. But we do have a little bit of a buffer built in for them to take it to get service. If they do need to run a couple of local errands, they can do that as long as it's an approved driver. But they don't have a really big buffer as far as being able to take it to any extravagant vacations by no means. But they can do some local trips if they need to, especially getting service to make sure the vehicle is maintained. So we have a little bit of a buffer in there as well, and some processes in place to ensure that that's not being abused.
For the companies, there are a lot of government mandates, and then just also the companies being more environmentally aware.
Mhm.
And you guys promote the fact that this helps the company be more environmentally aware. How does that happen, and what is that benefit for the companies?
Yeah, so the company, we're seeing a lot of, push down from a lot of corporate businesses that sustainability is a big piece. ESG, sustainability, carbon footprint. When we look at it as a rental branch or a rental company, we're putting a lot of vehicles out on the road. This is a true division where we can provide a true service for a company to actually show a carbon reduction. There's multiple benefits that go into that. They can take these sustainability reports that we're able to provide on a quarterly basis to show the true amount of CO2 emissions that they're able to reduce by implementing this program. One vehicle can take up to 5 to 6 vehicles off the road, and then up to a 15 passenger, it can take up to 14 vehicles off the road, which emits a lot of CO2. And so being able to show that true sustainability reduction as far as CO2 emissions can go a long way for these companies who have to provide any sort of sustainability reporting to their corporate office or even just locally in their community.
And that boils over into the employees as well, because we're seeing a lot of employees who want to see the company they work for
Yeah.
making efforts toward sustainability and environmental issues, and so it in some cases helps with their recruiting and the retaining of employees in that fact, because they can show what they are doing in that effort.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's part of, we've seen some reports that come out with the newer workforce that's starting to look for jobs. That's part of their process is looking for companies who have some sort of sustainability or environmental friendly offerings, benefits, what have you. And this is something that they can show, to your point. Hey, this is what we're doing to help the company, but also help the environment and help you get to and from work by providing an additional benefit for transportation.
And are you seeing that it's helping in, I guess you would say, social ways? And the fact that you've got, maybe 10 people from various departments of the company riding in the same vehicle together to and from work, is it improving the life at work for the employees that are, getting to know each other a little better?
Absolutely. That's one we really take a lot of pride in. And for our division, what we call is a family, because they're typically in vans, they kind of build that family atmosphere. Because to your point, you may not know everybody that you work with. And you may not know that Johnny or Sally lives a couple of streets down or a couple of neighborhoods over. But once you get into a vehicle, you ride to work every day, you start to get that coffee talk out in the morning, and you build a really good relationship with this group of people. that you start to build trust and really that family atmosphere, which really helps us to provide the service. We really pride ourselves on customer service as far as from a company standpoint, and to be able to provide that from a benefit standpoint, but also to build that culture for the company, not only just in the one band, but for the entire company as well. It's seen some improvements in overall production at the plants and the facilities, just the overall morale, and to have that corporate citizenship of, maybe you're an employer that provides a little bit better, employee atmosphere, a little bit better culture. It kind of sets yourself apart when you're looking for this new talent that's coming in.
With your partnership with the company, what does that partnership look like? You don't just drop a car off at their front door and leave, right? You help provide management of the program. You help them identify which employees may be more interested. You help them map out where their employees live, that kind of thing. Give us some of the details of that relationship with the company.
Absolutely. We want to be as hands-on as possible. And to the employer side, we're not trying to add anything to their plate. Typically, this sits in an HR role, and we know that HR is busy on a day-to-day basis, and we don't want to add anything crazy to their schedule. But we do want to work with them to show and identify opportunities. And you mentioned, we do an anonymous mapping analysis to identify where their employees are coming from based off their schedule for really twofold. It shows where they have the biggest, radius of people coming, but also some opportunities to recruit from. Maybe they don't have a lot of employees coming from certain areas around that they can increase their recruiting efforts in. And once we identify these groups, we come on site. I would be the one that would come out with a local team to talk with these employees, to show the benefits, to really outline what a program would look like, to show the cost savings. So we're really hands-on. We like to get out into the company's area to try to talk to these individuals, be on site. And then once the vehicles are on the road, if you've ever rented a vehicle from our company, we do a walk around the vehicle. We actually look at the vehicle itself. We sign off on the agreement. So we do that on every vehicle that we deliver. So we have that, one-on-one time to actually show the vehicle, the ins and outs of it. And once it's delivered and it's on the road, we have a dedicated team that works behind the scenes for any of those day-to-day challenges that come up. If for some reason you're not able to get gas that day, there's a challenge with a flat tire, something may happen, just the what ifs that come up. We have a team that works behind the scenes on a day-to-day basis with our accounts for all of those challenges. So it's that really family atmosphere, that dedicated account management that we have. And so you're not going to just be left with a vehicle and say, hey, good luck. We're going to be there with you the whole step of the way to make sure that we're answering all the questions and providing that service that you're expecting.
And that mapping process as well, you identify, sections of employees that are congregated close together and where their
Correct.
homes are close together, and you help create the efficient routes. So how
Mm-hmm.
will this particular van or SUV, how will the driver pick everybody up, get to work on time, how deliver them back home? And so you guys help design those routes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of the process initially, is to really understand, if there is a need for it. With a lot of these companies that are in very rural markets, yeah, you kind of have an idea of where your employees come from, but you don't know the extent. We've seen some employees that are traveling an hour and a half, 2 hours plus to get to work. And that's a long way to drive. And you're passing a lot of other businesses that any given day you could stop and say, hey, I'm driving 2 hours to work. I could work here and already be there. So for us, when we do these mapping analysis, we really try to identify the ones we kind of work outside in a sense, to show that the ones who are further away are really the higher risk of either leaving or looking for another job. So we try to work from that outside market in to provide those benefits, to show that, hey, that your company's thinking of you as well. And here are some extra benefits that we can help provide. And to your point, as long as they're on a major corridor and it makes sense for the group, they can look at, any major parking lot. So if it's like a Publix, Walmart parking lot, they make a meet up at, or, a parking ride that they can stop in just off the interstate. As long as it makes sense for the group, We by no means want them to turn into a bus route where they're going door to door and taking an extra 45 minutes or an hour to get to work. But we look to identify and try to help identify that route for the group that's going to help maximize their time to get to and from work by providing that benefit.
Nolan, we've pretty well covered a lot of detail already in our time together. Is there anything we're missing? Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that's an important part of the program you need to talk about?
I think you've touched on a lot of it, Carl, and I really appreciate the time. The biggest thing for us is really, if we were in a California market, some of these bigger areas that transportation is a really big challenge, for a lot of companies and individuals. Being in Alabama, people are really high on the SUVs, the trucks. We want to meet our own vehicle, and so transportation as a whole. Can be a challenge. And this is a way that we're able to provide an equitable ride to work that's reliable, that's affordable for the individuals, but also an added benefit for the individual, for the employer as well. And for these rural markets, these travelers are going, like I said, an hour, hour and a half to and from work each day. It puts a lot of wear and tear on their vehicles. So if you're able to provide a benefit that can put a little extra money back in their pocket from not having to put the wear and tear, the fuel on their vehicle, or the fuel in their vehicle, but also raise your status, in the area to provide a benefit. It's something that's really going a long way, and we're starting to see a lot of interest in the area. When you think of a van pool program and commuting to and from work, you think of those bigger cities like the LAs, the Chicagos, New Yorks, where van pooling and riding together is almost mandated. Here, it's a little bit outside the box, but they're the employees who are really forward thinking and thinking of their employees are really starting to show the interest, and we're starting to get a lot of traction throughout the state. So really excited about where we're going, especially here in the East Alabama area. We got a lot of really good conversations going, so really excited to see where it's going in the future.
Right, and I can see the benefit that this would be to a lot of the employers, especially who have people who live in the rural areas
Mhm.
and have a difficult time getting to work. Uh, Nolan, how do the companies watching this get in touch with you if they would like to get more information, a personal visit, a little more detail? What's the best thing for them to do?
They can reach out to me directly via email. They can also go on to our website, so commutewithenterprise.com, and they can send in information as a lead that they may want more information from a company standpoint, that this may be something that could make sense. And Carl, I don't know if you have the opportunity or can share the information, but I can give my email
Yeah,
on here as well, if that would make sense. But reaching out to me directly or either going online to our website to submit more specific information that they would like to learn more about.
and that is Nolen.Smith, Nolen, Nolen.Smith at em.com is your
Correct.
email address. And that's the
Correct.
best way for folks to just reach out to you and ask for more information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we certainly would appreciate any conversation to identify and see if it's something that could make sense for everybody.
Well, all right. Well, Nolan, the time has passed very quickly, and I appreciate you taking the time again to join us, and so we can learn more about Commute with Enterprise. And we yeah, thank you for being with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. I appreciate the time.
And folks, we thank you for joining us today as well on the East Alabama Works video podcast series. I'm Carl Brady, and I'll see you on the next one.